Hey guys, welcome to the Do Good podcast. I am your host Rob Watson, and in this episode I've got a really inspiring conversation to share with you guys. It's with Natalie Fee, who's an environmental campaigner and the founder of the charity City to Sea, which is a non-profit organisation which has been running campaigns to prevent marine plastic pollution now for about the past 3 or 4 years, and making incredible strides in that as well, engaging communities. They're working with retailers and lobbying manufacturers and government, and with that, being able to reverse some of the trends of, disposable items to safeguard our seas. So I chatted with Natalie to find out here all about it and what was the reasons, for her first being inspired about it, which is a really, touching story in itself, and the journey she's gone on. And I think it's just testament to all of us that, we can make a difference, big or small. And even though Natalie's making a huge difference with all the work she's doing and the impact she's making, she's a real game changer in many respects for the work that she's doing for the environment. But we can all make an impact as well. And we talk about Natalie's new book, which is out now, which is called How to Save the World for Free, which is literally supposedly full of hundreds of tips on how we can live a little bit more lightly on the earth. So we talk about that, and it's great to be able to just chat with people, really are, and it's really inspiring. And like she says, she's not alone. There's millions of people now who are waking up to the call that we have to take some action, some positive action. So yeah, I'll dive into today's episode. A bit of an interesting one this for me. It's the first time that I thought I've done a phone interview. All the other ones have been done, like I'll go see them face to face, or if I do them online, it's a bit of a video call. So this one turned out to be a phone call. A bit of a challenge, actually. It kind of felt like I was reverting back to when I first did one. I was a little bit, maybe I wasn't on the top of my game with this one, but I think I still got all the points across that we wanted to, and allowed Natalie to share her story and her journey. So yeah, guys, anyway, hope you enjoy today's episode. Let's get on with it. First, Natalie, I really appreciate you taking the time out to chat with me today. I've been really inspired listening to your TEDx talk and reading all about your journey and stuff. And it's been quite a journey and an adventure for you. And it's really, really inspiring the way you it seems like you've kind of just gone along with what's felt right and made it up as you've gone along.
Yeah, pretty much.
but done it beautifully, and that's a really good lesson for life, isn't it? I think if we plan too far ahead, we can maybe get stuck in the planning and not do enough action. So yeah, I listened to your TED talk this morning, and that was really, really inspiring. And I must admit, when I was listening about the albatross film and the clips, I felt so much pain when I was watching it. It was so sad. So sad. And it's interesting. Sometimes we need that moment in life, don't we, where we're watching something or we read something to really pull us in a different direction. We can't have the blinkers on anymore. And what was interesting about that one is that, them islands are like thousands of miles away, from anywhere, and they're actually getting washed up with all this plastic. So that's where the journey started for you then.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I mean, I've always been conscious of the environment, really, and I've always felt this kind of affinity and allegiance or relationship really with nature, even though my career hasn't always reflected that. I've definitely sort of always seen nature as an ally and a refuge and a source of inspiration and creativity and well-being, and something, I think it was about 21 actually, I sort of first, when I was traveling around South America, so 20 years ago now, that I, came firsthand, sort of face to face with things like deforestation and mining and big corporations and their effect on indigenous communities and things like that. So yeah, I kind of, had my eyes opened up at quite a young age, but it took me, until my late 30s really to really kind of make that my focus.
Because I'm always fascinated by people's backstories a little bit and where it takes them to get to. Because often, say someone was just to see you for the first time and they'd see that you're heading up a charity, you employ 30 staff, you're going out really making a huge difference. I think it's great to hear about that backstory, so people can who are in that position now, and maybe they want to make that shift, they want to make that change in the world, in the life. So to hear them journey. So I believe you were like in the IT recruitment, were you in the 90s? And
originally, yes.
Yeah.
Well, I dropped out of uni because it didn't feel like the right thing for me to be doing at the time. I didn't really know what I wanted to do in life. So I had a sort of a bit of a winding career path, really. I did the corporate sort of executive thing in London and around the UK for a few years, earned lots of money, realized that wasn't, what makes us happy, went off to South America, traveled, sort of saw a bit of the world, and then thought, I think maybe the inner journey is perhaps what we're here for. So I then came back and trained as a yoga teacher, and ended up moving to Glastonbury, and I lived there for 5 years and I kind of started writing as well. So I wrote my first book when I was there raising my son. So yeah, and then that kind of, after that, I realized that I was actually felt like I'd in some way was born to perform or present, or sort of telly and stage had always been a big part of my childhood. But then as I kind of got spiritual as I was older, I kind of dismissed that as like, oh, it's very ego based, and it was very about sort of self-centered, and I needed to do something that was much more of service, not realizing that actually shining our light in the world and being who we really are and bringing our unique gifts to the world is of service.
Yeah.
So I think I was about 33 when I had this kind of crashing realization that I wasn't doing the work that I felt I was born to do. So I retrained in TV presenting, which again, I don't think was quite the right thing, but it was either that or acting, and I chose TV presenting. I probably should have chosen acting. And when then came back, and I got, I ended up moving to Bristol 7 years ago, got a job working for an ethical TV production company, and learned the art and craft of creating content, telling stories, producing films. And then I went on to work at our local TV company as a presenter and producer. And then that's at that point when I started forming City to Sea in my spare time.
It's interesting how, even though some of them things might feel like they're separate in some ways, but it all forms the same thing, which gives you the experience and now to be able to lead a quite big team, but also having that such like a real focus on wanting to really make a difference. And you used the term before about to be of service, but in a way you're saying you're shining your light in that way now. Can you tell me a little bit more about your travels? Because I'm really interested. You went to the Amazon, and what do you feel like that going seeing the world and doing them things really like had that big impact to sort of like trigger you to just to get yourself out of your our routine and our lives? Because we can live we can be quite have our blinkers on, can't we? And just we get up and might not even go and see too many different places or too many different people in a particular week or month as such.
I mean, I think it's hugely important for young people to go out and see the world. These days, they don't necessarily need to jump on a plane and do it. Maybe you could, go interrailing.
Yeah.
But why not? If it is that trip of a lifetime, I think it's really important for us to at least break the ties a little bit of where we grew up and our family and our friends, and go out there. And I think it does shape us and expand our perspective and expand our world a little bit. Certainly more so than not doing it would do.
Yeah.
And I think, did it matter that it was the Amazon? Did it matter that it was South America? I don't really know. I mean, it just felt like where I wanted to go. But ultimately I ended up finding the teacher that I wanted to train with back in my hometown then of Southampton. So it was kind of that classic alchemist story of, going away looking for something, taking all my baggage with me, and then realizing that it was sort of right at home all along. But I think I needed to go on the journey.
Yeah, that's an amazing book, isn't it? Book.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true, isn't it? We don't necessarily have to look too far. I think sometimes we need to escape what's in front of us, but then you do need to sometimes shake yourself out of your comfort zone to go and see a
Mm.
different way, to have a different perspective. So it then led you to where you are now, and you're running City to the Sea, and it seems like you're really shaking things up and had a huge impact the past few years. How did it all sort of start then? Because you've now got 30 staff, but it's obviously it must have started just for yourself.
Yeah. Well, I just, like we were talking about the footage of the albatross trailer. So it was a clip from a film called Albatross by an artist called Chris Jordan, and that was the moment for me when I saw that clip that I knew I needed to do something about plastic pollution. Like, the strength of the grief and the reaction that I felt watching that was too powerful to ignore. And I didn't really have a choice in ignoring it. I knew I had to do something. And I just started off with a crowdfunding campaign. I thought, as I dabble with music occasionally, I thought I would do a song. Well, I'd already written a song. I thought the music video could work if it was about plastic pollution. But as it turned out, as I tend to say, I'm not Beyonce. I don't have a few million, tens of millions of followers that are going to, hang off my every word and share my latest creation. So, I realized, even though this crowdfund was successful and it was still, I think, a great sort of artistic expression, it didn't have the impact that I was hoping it was going to have. It didn't kind of feel like it was going to change the world. So I went on from there to look at, well, what can I do locally in Bristol? We've got a problem with plastic spewing out of the River Avon here into the Bristol Channel and out to sea. So what can we do locally that could make a difference, that could be replicated in other cities around the world or around England? And that is sort of where it began, really. And then we kind of landed on a couple of campaigns through having connected to people in my community. There was a couple of people that were interested in helping, and we formed sort of the early City to Sea team and got a little bit of funding in to run our refill campaign, and also to start our Switch the Stick campaign. So refill was all about getting people off of plastic bottles and refilling their water bottle on the go. And Switch the Stick was all about getting retailers to stop making cotton buds out of plastic and make them out of paper instead. So they were the two campaigns we began with.
Amazing. To start from such small things, but you really felt like you had to do something and there was an impact. And I think now we're living in a world now where maybe 10, 20, 30 years ago, you could maybe ignore these things, but everywhere now, through yourself, your charity, and what we're hearing, the David Attenborough effect, but other things, just what we're seeing in the world, like, we can't continue to just go on this rampant consumerism of just more, make more stuff, but also making it without any sort of regard for the future and for the future generations, and also for the planet itself. So it's absolutely incredible, and to see how far you've come and the impact you've made. And even though you're getting changing at consumer level, but you've actually really had an effect on on the actual companies, which seems to be that's such a big so important, where I think we can all individually make some impact and change stuff, which can be huge, but for you to be having a real impact on the industry as well must you've kind of gone up. It's like David versus Goliath in a way, and you've it's really impressive. How have you found that in terms of when you've had to face up to some of them companies?
Well, I mean, just to sort of comment on your point, like, I don't think the two are separate. I don't think individual action and system change are separate things. The only reason that we see these changes come about is because individuals start demanding it, and the more we demand it and the more we change our behavior, the more we influence everything around us. We are social creatures. We don't do anything basically of our own accord, especially if we think that it's going to challenge the status quo. But we do things, but then we do it, and we do it because other people are doing it. We see it's safe to do so, and we all start changing our behavior. So individual action is hugely, hugely powerful, and it is what brings about massive change. So but yeah, in terms of the big businesses, I mean, to be honest, there's not been major resistance. With the cotton bud campaign, there was initially resistance, but when they saw that, over 150,000 of their customers were calling for that change, they then agreed to make it. And in the case of refill, which is very much a behaviour change campaign, we've had a little bit of some griping from the bottled water industry, because obviously they don't want us saying that bottled water isn't the best thing ever. So we've had some sort of unhappy emails from them, but generally the move very much here in the UK is towards less single-use plastic, especially for items that we're only using for a number of minutes, if seconds, within the case of stirrers and cotton buds. So luckily now we're starting to see legislation slowly coming in that's going to ban things like cotton buds, stirrers and straws. And that's, again, will come about because of individual action and people saying, we don't want this.
Yeah, definitely. I went to Glastonbury Festival this year, and I think it was the first time that they banned single-use plastic. And I think it stopped potentially 2 million
plastic bottles. I think,
plastic, potentially, stopped 2 million plastic bottles during that time. Which that's it's a decent little dent. It's not.
I know, it's amazing.
Yeah, and it was just people were like, bring your own bottles, or you can buy a reusable bottle when you're there. We all took our own. We use them anyway at home, and I think you've got some advice on your site about when people go traveling, because you notice that when you go traveling, it can feel a little bit more challenging, because you might not be able to get access to clean water sometimes, even though if you've got your bottle with you, depending on where you are, whether you're different parts like India or in different parts of Asia, it might not be as easy. But it's great that you got lots of tips on that and how people can do it.
Yeah, it's good. It's been the refill campaign's been absolutely incredible in terms of empowering communities to make a difference where they live and run refill communities. We've got over 300 local schemes now, but that, as you rightly say, is in the UK where we've got access to some of the best quality drinking water in the world coming out of our taps. So we do try and encourage people that are travelling to buy a bottle that's got a filter in it, so they can drink the water out of a tap, but that it filters on the go, so that they aren't still buying single-use plastic in those countries as well, where they don't really have the recycling facilities or the waste facilities to recycle or process the plastic anyway.
And in terms of the refill campaign, so you said it's like community driven, so there's a few hundred now of people, like teams, they're sort of like setting up them zones for it.
Yeah, so I mean, we've got like the big ones like Refill London, but obviously London's so big that within Refill London you've got like Refill Brixton and Refill Islington, and what else have we got? We've got sort of lots of different refill campaigns within Refill, and these are all powered by volunteers. So yeah, as I say, over 300 local community schemes. Which has just been amazing. We work with the water industry, so they help fund it, and so we were able to then give away posters and stickers and training and resources to communities that wanted to run refill where they live.
Oh, that's amazing. So, and is it businesses that are opening the doors for people to get the refills, or at some point is there going to be like fountains in places as well for people?
It's a mix of both. Yeah, I mean, initially it was very much focused on getting existing taps and cafes and taps in cafes and shops and restaurants, and any shop basically that had a publicly accessible tap, or that they had a tap sort of within the shop that they could fill people's bottles up from. So it was really just about giving people permission, so they didn't have to feel awkward about going into a shop or cafe and asking for a free refill. They could just feel comfortable because they saw the sticker on the window, or they saw on the app that they could go there. So yeah, it's been amazing to see it grow over the past 3 years now. We've had over 250,000 people download the app, stopping over 100 million plastic bottles by the end of this year, I think. So wow. Yeah, it's been lovely to see that grow.
Yeah, and it's only something that's just going to snowball as well, isn't it? It's just going to keep growing and growing and growing. And I think that's a key thing that you said, that knowing people that can go in there and they don't feel like they have to feel obliged to buy something from there. They can just on the way just nip in and get a refill. means that they don't have to buy a plastic bottle somewhere else. Or yeah, it's incredible. Really is incredible. And is there any particular like countries that you sort of feel like are really leading the charge with this, that have inspired you along the way?
No, I mean the UK is probably the leading, in terms of what we've seen from the sort of plastic fighting NGOs, non-profits here in the UK, and the way the media's got behind it in the UK. I definitely think, sort of having researched and seen other countries, that the UK, in terms of public awareness and plastic as an issue, is riding high. Obviously, other countries like Norway, Germany, who already have a deposit scheme, you could say are doing better, because you don't really see plastic bottles littering streets or rivers or beaches in those countries, because they actually have a deposit scheme. So you could say we're completely tailing behind, but that is where our, I'm just going to say it, lame government will not prioritise, sort of, or hasn't been prioritising our environmental issues, even when they've been proven to be good for the circular economy, good for the environment. So yeah, it's slightly frustrating, but I think, in terms of media and public awareness, it's been fantastic.
Well, maybe in a few weeks' time, we might be hopeful of getting a change with the government. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
We shall
there.
see. Yeah.
You've obviously done some really great campaigns. It'd be nice to hear about some of the other ones, but is there a particular piece of work that you've done that you're really especially proud of?
I mean, yes, I got all of it in a way. I mean, the Switch the Stick campaign was pretty epic, and getting all 9 major retailers to stop making cotton buds out of plastic, and the equivalent, that's like 400 tons a year of cotton buds that aren't being made from plastic anymore, and they're being made out of paper. So that just felt really sort of juicy and tangible, and like, oh my God, we can actually change the world. Like, we really can. So that was amazing. But that was, back in 2016. So since then, I think the thing I've been most proud of at the moment is probably our Plastic Free Periods campaign, which has developed alongside the Plastic Free Periods sort of awareness raising and campaign work. We've built a schools program, which is now being rolled out for free across schools in the UK, and anyone who's in education can request it for free. Any teachers can request it for free, or even get trained in it, or have someone come in and deliver the training. But it's called Rethink Periods, and it's an unbiased education program that talks about all aspects of menstruation, but also focuses on the environment and shows students the options that are available to them in terms of reusable menstrual products. So it gives students a hands-on experience of menstrual cups and washable pads and period pants, and it's just fantastic that this is now available. And instead of us just getting the sort of standard education from the big corporates who want us to use their plastic disposable products for the rest of our lives, we've actually got an alternative coming in, which is disrupting that. So I am really proud of that.
Yeah, it is. It's absolutely incredible. And I guess you must be extremely proud of building the team that you have. And
I know that was the other thing that sort of always, in terms of when you said that, of like, the third thing is always how it's really rewarding to see a team of 30-something staff. I don't run the organisation anymore. Rebecca's our CEO, and she's hugely talented and capable, and which frees me up to do more of the stuff that I'm good at, which is get out there and talk to people and write stuff and create stuff, rather than run and shape a growing organisation. So I've got an incredible team, which I am proud of and grateful for.
How was that then? I'm interested to know from, was that easy for you to let go of the sort of it being run in a way? Yeah.
Yes, I was really ready to let go of it. I'm great at starting things, terrible at carrying them on. So kind of knowing my strengths, and knowing that for me, my book came out last month, so I've been really busy lately, going around doing talks and promoting the book. So the fact that I've got a team here at City to See that can, keep things moving and fresh, and focused on the campaigns, while I can go and talk to people and share our work in the world is just fantastic. So yeah, it wasn't hard for me to let go of the bits that I'm not very good at.
Well, that's really refreshing to hear, and also very empowering, is it? Because I think a lot of us at times can maybe hold on to stuff when we need to let go and know that there's other people who are just as capable, in fact, more capable of running things in certain ways than just to. So that's really good. Otherwise, you could have been still at the helm, and you wouldn't have been able to concentrate your time and your energy on the things that you really feel like you bring value to.
No, I know.
And so does that mean then that you've got other interests and other visions for stuff that you want to go tackle besides things with just to do with maybe within the environment?
No, I think my focus is very much on the environment. I'm interested in creativity as well, and how our work in the world, how our creative expression brings about change, and how creativity can save the world. My book is called How to Save the World for Free, and that looks at all the other things going wrong in the world other than plastic, in terms of all the environmental issues that we're facing. But it's primarily a practical, upbeat, playful guide to how we can all make a difference. So in one sense, yes, I am kind of shifting the dial a bit from talking just about plastic to talking about all the other subject areas as well. But it's really, I see myself more as like a sort of like a road sign, kind of like an information point. I've kind of got all this information which I deliver in a certain way, which hopefully is accessible to people. I'm not academic, so I've got an honorary doctorate, but it's just an honorary one. So I think I can communicate in a way that people relate to, and I don't kind of tell people what they should do, but I hopefully inspire people to think about which areas of their lives they can make an impact in or make a difference in.
Yeah, well, I love the style of the book as well, beautifully illustrated. So I'll be buying that for a couple of people's stocking fillers, I reckon, for Christmas.
Hooray! Thanks, Rob.
It's I think the more information like that, and I think I read something about it's the tone of voice as well. It's very much like that. You said, I think use the term like dangling the carrot rather than using the stick. And people don't like to be told what to do, but if they can be inspired and they can be guided along that path instead, then it's a much more harmonious outcome, I think, for everyone.
I think so. I mean, there's definitely a place for the stick instead of the carrot. Like sometimes we see something really shocking or painful, which just wakes us up out of our sort of stupor and it makes us see things differently, and then we can choose to act. And sometimes, real shocking information is what shifts us, but generally it needs to have a feeling attached to it. So I like humor as much as possible, but yeah, there's definitely a place for fear and shocking stuff as well to bring about change.
Yeah, so one thing that sort of amazed me a little bit as well is just like hearing your story and the journey that you've gone on. Is that you seem to have a lot of self-confidence, a lot of belief in yourself, and where's that come from?
Well, it's interesting. I think I don't know that I do. I mean, I think I do what I do. I mean, I could sort of talk about where my creativity comes from, and I feel like I share that in the world, but I wouldn't say it's a confident sharing. I definitely have, as I'm sure many people do, a fair amount of old anxiety and sort of strange beliefs and patterns that I picked up from my parents that I still carry despite years of work trying to unpick it. So I think, probably I don't have a very thick skin, so putting things out into the world, I'm quite often sort of find myself being anxious around how it's going to be received, or if I'm going to say the right thing or the wrong thing, especially on the number of live TV things that I do. But I think I do it, I do it anyway, because I think as I'll say as an artist, really, as someone kind of creating stuff and then putting it out into the world, I wouldn't just want to create stuff and then it just not go anywhere. I think it's about expressing ourselves into the world. So yeah, I mean, I'd say confident. I mean, I'm confident that we do need to support nature, and we do need to change our relationship with nature if we are all to thrive. So I guess I could say I'm confident in the cause. But yeah, I think, humans, we have our fair share generally of inner stuff that goes on behind the scenes, that can we generally might have to work at or push through to be more present and less fearful.
So in many ways, it's kind of this deeper meaning and cause that is like, pulling you along, driving you, because you feel like there's such a, a desire and a need for it. And yeah, it's interesting to hear that as well, and to see, if you to talk a little bit, to be, that we've all got vulnerabilities and we all feel anxious, because I think what can stop some people sometimes from doing stuff, they can get excited about something, and then they can be like, well, then that mind chatter kicks in, them negative patterns saying you couldn't do that, and you're not good enough, and what's the point in you trying, and stuff like that. And I think it's we can all have that little voice say it into us. So it's great that you've just like, you plow forward and you go, well, I'm going to do it anyway, and I'm going to see where it leads me, and I'll have fun along the way. And it seems like you're having a lot of fun with what you're doing as well.
I do try and have a lot of fun. Yeah. I think our videos are playful, and our content, we try and keep upbeat and positive, even if we're tackling serious subjects. And yeah, I am generally quite a silly person by nature, so I enjoy sharing that silliness with the world.
Oh, that's good to hear. Have you got any sort of like big plans in terms of for City to Sea? Anything like a big thing that you want to tackle?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think we're expanding our refill campaign to go beyond water, so that people can use the app to see what else they can refill in their local area. So they can refill their shampoo and conditioner, or they can refill their laundry liquids, or find out where the nearest zero waste shop is, so that we can help people switch to using less packaging overall. So not just switching away from plastic, but actually switching away from single use. So that's exciting. We're piloting that at the moment in Bristol and in Oxford. And I think, for me, really, the focus is very much still on the book for the next few months, really helping it get out there, giving it its best start. When you put a new product out there, I think initially there's you have to work at it to get it out there and in people's minds and awareness. So yeah, and then with us and Plastic and City to Sea, it's always looking at how we can connect our actions to the ocean. So our refill campaign will continue to grow, and our plastic free periods campaign, and then we run a plastic free travel campaign in the summer, and that is last year we got a load of hotels to commit to switching away from their plastic mini bottles and start using refill sort of containers and dispensers in the bedroom. So we'll be working on that again this year, and yeah, connecting plastics to climate breakdown and helping to educate people on how plastics are linked to fossil fuels and carbon emissions and methane and that sort of thing. So that's part of the goals for 2020 as well.
Sounds you got plenty of things to keep yourselves busy with, plenty of challenges ahead.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, we do ourselves out of a job, and all of these environmental things would be tackled. But at the moment, it looks like for the next 5 years, we've got our work cut out at least.
And what do you think then? So obviously it's great that we're turning the ship around and we're going to stop putting enough plastic out. I think it's something like in Norway, which is it's something incredible. Like they recycle something like 90+% of the plastic. So it's like as if they don't need to create any more plastic. And in some ways they say, and okay, we've got all the plastic we need now. We don't need to create any more. We'll just we'll recycle and recreate from there. What do you think about though, like broader perspective, and actually the damage that's already been created and the actual cleanup operations that we've got to do? Have we gone past that tipping point yet, or are you still very hopeful that we can clean things up?
Well, in terms of plastic, I mean, the damage has very much been done to the oceans. The great news is that they will, apart from the sort of tiny microplastics, so if we can stop plastics getting into the sea, then the seas will in time clean themselves through storms and through wind. It will blow the plastic up across, so the storms will lift it up from the seabed, storms will blow it into land. And so by continuing to support and mobilize community beach clean efforts, that's the best way to clean the oceans, is to really get the plastics off of the beaches when it's been sort of purged from the sea, really. So there's obviously the two issues of stopping it from getting in there and then cleaning it up through things like community beach cleans. But there's a lot of other, big stuff going on with the oceans that, not just plastic. Ocean acidification is a growing concern as there's increased CO2 in the atmosphere. The oceans are sucking that up and becoming too acidic from absorbing too much CO2. We've got the ice caps that are melting at unprecedented rates, and overfishing and over fertilizers because of the runoff from the land. So there's a lot that's stressing the oceans, and certainly City to Sea can play its part in helping people make the connection from what they eat to what they flush down the toilet to how they travel. All of these things are interlinked.
And I think going back to what you said right at the beginning about how, we can all have an impact, and we, whether it's something small, just recycling at home, or we go and evolve and get into a beach cleanup, or just doing other community-led stuff, or maybe getting a part of your, the refill campaign and being a champion in your area. There's loads of options for us now, isn't there, to actually play our own roles?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the joys of being a change maker and being active and participating in whatever way we can, and that can be from your home or that can be out in the community, is generally it brings you joy. It's a joyous thing. You meet new people, you get out more, you feel like you're doing some good in the world, so you don't feel so powerless. So there are real benefits to taking action, and especially if we can do it without attachment to whether or not it's going to save us or not, or is it going to work or not? Because ultimately we don't really know. We don't really know if the scientists who predict we're heading for 4 degrees warming by the end of the century are right. We don't really know if gases like methane hydrate that are now sort of leaking out of the oceans are going to spark in the next 10 years. We don't know if technology is going to advance at such a rate that we're all going to be fine. So getting close with your communities, growing veg, working on refill schemes, really kind of doing projects like that is a very empowering thing to do, and it builds resilience as well. So if there are things like food shortages or tensions because of climate migration or those sort of things, actually having really strong relationships within your community is going to be a really valuable thing.
Yeah, that's very sound advice. You touched on it about growing food and doing it on a community level. Is it closer to home? What sort of advice would you say to people, if they're looking to make some simple changes in the actual household?
Well, I mean, starting with plastic, just kind of do a little bit of an overhaul through your life and see which things you can commit to ditching, which things you can actually do without when it comes to single-use plastic, which things you can reuse. And so, you've got your reusable bottle, your coffee cup, all the your reusable cutlery, just sort of your basics like that when you leave the house. And then in terms of like the big stuff that we can do for reducing our carbon emissions would be to eat a lot less meat. So, not eating meat more than once a week. If you don't want to be vegetarian or vegan, that is. So yeah, massively reducing meat and dairy intake, massively reducing the number of flights you take if you fly regularly, and switching to a green energy supplier. Those are sort of three big things that you can do alongside phasing out plastic from your life.
Yep, all doable things for the most part, and especially the green energy at home. Like we shift to we did actually look to get solar panels on our home, but because we just didn't face the right way, we were like north facing, so it just wasn't going to be feasible. But there's so many good energy suppliers out there now, and they match. In fact, some of them are very beat the prices of the gas and the conventional way. So, and it feels good. It does. It feels good. We had an electric car for a few years, and it just felt good knowing that we were plugging it in and we were charging it up from home, from a renewable energy source, which was coming off someone else's solar panels. And it just felt good about us doing something.
It does, doesn't it? And then you tell people about it, and then people are like, oh, God, that looks like they're having a really good time doing that. And that looks like that feels really good, so I might do it too. So, yeah, it's good. Good for you.
Yes, well, we'll try and do our bit in some way. So what do you think then about, say, behind Extinction Rebellion at the moment then, and all the activities that they've been doing?
I am, yeah. I've been involved in Extinction Rebellion for, I don't know, probably a year now. I wouldn't say I'm sort of at the core and sort of, fully involved, but I've got my affinity group. I've been on a few actions, and I think, like, as a result of school strike for climate, with the stuff that came from Greta, with the youth strikes, with Extinction Rebellion, like, there is no doubt that all of these actions over the past year have contributed to what is now being seen as a real sea change in terms of how climate change is now actually being addressed and talked about. And not just climate change, but the ecological emergency. The fact that the government have declared a climate emergency, obviously we need to see the action to follow that up. But Bristol here declared that it will be carbon neutral by 2030. So, that there's been a real change in how the news is reported. And that's been as a direct result of people taking to the streets and being seen and being vocal and standing up for the planet.
And also on that level, when you're going out and you're getting involved in that thing, you develop that. Talked about community before. You develop a community spirit.
It's so amazing. Like, in my affinity group, I've got 2 doctors and an NHS manager in my affinity group. I've got an IT worker and someone else who works in logistics, and an actor, and a scientist. And it's like, I just wouldn't have met all those people in everyday life, because we've got different social circles, we've got different work circles, and it's just been amazing. It's been that's been super, super lovely. And whilst I don't agree with all of sort of Extinction Rebellion's tactics, the fact is that it is self-organizing, so you can't kind of always predict who's going to do what and where. But it is, it's that whole self-organizing thing, which is very participatory, is really refreshing. And it's incredible to see and witness and be part of this movement, which is self-organizing. It's kind of like a beautiful chaos, which actually brings results.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? And you got the People's Assembly. Yeah. And I think I even saw some of the manifestos recently. They're talking about that they would attempt to adopt that in some ways a bit more. And I think the more that we can bring the power back down to the communities, and people from a community level can be making more of an influence in their lives and the choices of how, say, policies are run and the government and stuff, rather decentralising stuff in some ways. And I think it can only be a good thing in many ways if we can get the right policies in place. Yeah,
I mean, certainly bringing some power to the people, in terms of making the decisions around things that are going to impact the environment, is really sensible, given how swayed our government is by corporate lobbyists. So actually making those decisions free from that kind of influence would be a really wise thing to do.
We will see. I think that, you say there's definitely been a sea change for stuff, particularly since around 2012. It feels like something has been changing. There's something in the air of people like enough's enough. We can't continue down this path of, destroying the planet. A few hundred years ago, 100 years ago, or even, said earlier on 20, 30 years ago, it may have felt like it's okay. We can continue to go down this path. There's a finite amount of resources for us to use, yet we live in a system, don't we, which is based on infinite growth and putting profit before everything else. And the more companies and charities that are in place for you, but also big companies that are, they've got the right ethos in place to care for the planet as well, and to care for the staff, and it not just be about shareholders' profits. And I think more of them are growing. I think one of them is, what's the big one? Is it Patagonia? Close. They are really, they're a huge company, but they have got such amazing ethos.
They are exemplary, aren't they? I mean, it is absolutely brilliant to have pioneers like Patagonia around as a business, which shows people how things can be done. It's fantastic, and I think, and the great thing about them is they also encourage people to buy less as well. Not just, it's about buying what you need to buy and buying quality when you do need to buy it. But yeah, I mean, certainly not everyone can afford to buy Patagonia clothes. So, it's still quite a privileged position to be in for those that can, afford to buy a Patagonia jumper or jacket or something. So I think sort of whilst they are, really representing the true cost of, ethical garments and products, we still have to look at ways in which the environmental movement can be inclusive for families on lower incomes, and make sure that, and that's where things like legislation and bans really help, because it's not about the individuals having to make those choices. It's the government has made those choices in effect for us. So supermarkets and polluters have to pay for the cleanup rather than the public, and rather than water companies, for example, having to pay for the fact that most wet wipes are made of plastic, and when people flush them they block the sewers. So really wet wipe manufacturers should be paying that. So things like polluter pays principle, and then bans on other things like we're seeing with cotton buds and straws and stirrers, those kind of things can really help address environmental issues without it then affecting or being exclusively for those who can afford to make those changes.
Yeah. And it's at a corporation level, it's holding people accountable, isn't it? Like you said then, the corporations should be doing the cleanups, not necessarily people. And of course, people power, and there's something empowering and amazing about getting along and doing stuff. It's even if you're just walking out on your streets on a walk and you're picking up some rubbish or doing stuff. But I think a lot of times corporations can hide behind sort of the way things are, the way that the government's set laws and set things in place so they can get away with it. But the big oil spill that's that we've had over time, and there's loads of stuff that have happened in the Amazon, I think, which is just so destructive, and yet the companies will fight tooth and nail through the courts not to have to pay for stuff and to run all sorts of different campaigns, and
still all going on now. So we do, I think sort of certainly in terms of the Amazon, I mean, eating less meat is something that everyone can afford to do, and can make a really significant impact on things like deforestation, and greenhouse gas emissions. So I was
going to say, there's lots of things that we can do, and there's lots of positives, and it's incredible. I feel really honoured, really, that I've been able to sit down and have a chat with you about this, because you really are making it so inspiring. And my podcast is called the Do Good Podcast, and I couldn't think of many others who are doing as good as you are, and hopefully I imagine that you're going to inspire a lot of people with this.
Oh, well, that's very sweet of you to say so. I'm definitely one of millions of us that are out there now, making a difference. But it's a real pleasure to speak to you too, and it's an honour for me to be for you to be sharing City to Sea's work out in the world, and mine too. And I'm grateful for that.
Yeah. So just a few more questions, and then we can wrap up. And like, so talking about doing good, who else do you admire? Whether it could be individuals that you feel like are going out and doing amazing work in the world, or it could be corporations or anything. Who's inspiring you right now?
Well, apart from my CEO, who does all the hard work here at City to See, I would say I think people. I bumped into Caroline Lucas the other day, a Green MP, and I think our only Green MP, and it's just, the amount of abuse really our politicians have to deal with, no matter what party you're from, but especially if you're, protecting the earth. Is really significant. So I think anyone that is brave enough to stand for election and put their head above the parapet really gets my respect, but especially Caroline. And I think sort of the wave of sort of youth strikers and activists now that are coming through. I just think I get a real sense of energy and hope from that as well, and how that's really changing things. So all the leaders of those movements and people behind those movements, and I think that's about it. Well, there's more. There's lots more, but for now.
I'm sure there is, and I think what ties in quite well with that, talking about Caroline, because she definitely just see like she's a real shining light in politics. And there's a few of us that are in there as well, I think, that are doing the best. But I think what ties in nicely, you're saying about like how the youth are rising up, is because they're getting active now in the teenage years. And it just goes to show like some of them are going to make amazing politicians in a few years. And they'll be all over it, rather than maybe there's just like green shoots starting off about the place. And it might feel like a lot of politicians in some ways are influenced too much by corporations. A lot of these youth are going to come in and they're going to have such a strong moral compass and be guided in that way that they'll almost be uncorruptible, and they'll have these real strong beliefs that they're there to serve, not just to serve the people but to serve the planet.
Let's hope so.
Yep, let's hope so. So the last question. So this podcast is all about sharing what good people are doing, like what you're doing. What advice would you give to someone who's looking to go out there and do their own bit of good in the world?
Go and buy my book. I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds of ways, definitely a couple of hundred, a few hundred ways in which you can help change the world in the book. So, I mean, obviously that would be a great start, and then go through that and just find which ones you love the most. I think kind of focus on what brings you the most joy. If you're really, really into cars and bicycles, then, focus on shifting that aspect of your life. If you're really, really into travel, then focus on greening that aspect of your life. If you love food, focus on inspiring others to switch to plant-based meals. So I think kind of, it's helpful to focus on what you love, because that keeps you energized and excited whilst you're sometimes coming up against resistance. Yeah,
that sounds like very sound advice. So where can people find out more about you and also get access to your book?
So personally, my website is nataliefee.com, and City to See is citytosee.org.uk.
Perfect.
And then all of the social media. So I'm on Instagram, Twitter, mostly, and City to See is across all of those, and Facebook.
Well, I'll be sure to share all the links to them things as well.
Thanks for your support. It's much appreciated.
There's today's episode all wrapped up, guys. If you get a chance, check out Natalie's new book. I'm sure there's going to be some great things in there to inspire us. Even if you just take a handful out of the hundreds that are there, then we can start to make a bit of a difference to things in our lives and our communities and the world at whole. So yeah, all the stuff we talked about today are in the show notes on the website, so you can check out Natalie's website, you can follow her, you can watch her TED talk. I've even put a link to her song that she created. Yeah, so hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Until next time, have a good one.